Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTGO Traders. My name is Tyrant, and this is Rivals of Ixalan's preview season for January 1st. You heard me, I almost said spoiler season, not preview season. If you guys don't know, Rivals of Ixalan preview season is actually going to be compressed, I think, into like 1 week, because pre-release is actually the following weekend. I think it's just mostly because of all of the stuff that they added into the December month, as far as the products they threw in there and all that kind of stuff. So they just kind of squished all of the information for Rivals of Ixalan into a single week. But that doesn't mean we're not going to stop and try and cover every single card before the set releases. I will say, bear with me, I'm kind of dealing with a sinus infection today, so if I come across a little not as alive or awake, that's the reason. Let's get right into it, guys. We have Dusk Charger here, a 4-mana 3/3 horse with Ascend. Ascend is a new mechanic for Rivals of Ixalan. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the city's blessing for the rest of the game. And then Dusk Charger gets +2/+2 as long as you have the city's blessing, which is a 4/4 5/5 if you have 10 or more permanents on the battlefield when this enters the battlefield. So this is a really cool mechanic. Ascend is one of those mechanics that I might like in the standard environment, but it's going to be one of those mechanics that I feel like it could be extremely broken, or if they put it on cards like this, where it's like, it's not terrible, it's not great, it might be good in draft. Do keep in mind the Ascend mechanic is if you control 10 or more permanents, you get the city's blessing for the rest of the game. That means if Dusk Charger enters the battlefield and we have 10 or more permanents, or if you get it to get up to 10 or more permanents, you do get the city's blessing, and the city's blessing stays on the battlefield. And then after that, you still have Ascend for all your other cards, I believe. Just let me know if I'm wrong on that in the comments below for sure. We want to make sure that Ascend is understood correctly. But I believe if you hit Ascend with a particular card, any card that has Ascend, you get the city's blessing, and then you have that for all your other Ascend cards, I believe. I think that's how it's working. It may not be, but from the video that they have on their site, it seems like that's the actual way they've used Ascend. So either way, that's a really cool way to use it. I think Dusk Charger here is going to be fantastic for us for a 4-mana 3/3 or 5/5 in the draft. And having another horse here, we might see a black-white horse tribal deck, maybe. No? Okay. Moving on here, we have Secrets of the Golden City. It's a 3-mana sorcery with Ascend again, and draw 2 cards. If you have the city's blessing, draw 3 cards instead. So Secrets of the Golden City is actually quite a fun card for us. A 3-mana draw 2 is nothing too important for us, but having Ascend, if we're up in a more Esper control strategy where we have lots of permanents on the battlefield thanks to hidden stockpile, something like that, Secrets of the Golden City might actually just be a 3-mana draw 3 cards. The only true thing, of course, holding back Secrets of the Golden City is that it's a sorcery, not an instant. So I feel like secrets may just be used in the drafting environment, and that's about it. We might see this in something like a Prowess deck, or maybe a Miracle Grow deck in standard, maybe, just for the draw 3 ability. I think that's really fun. But at the same time, I just feel like the sorcery is a little too slow. I feel like it's probably just going to be just for draft. Next up, we have Frilled Deathspitter. The art here is fantastic. 3-mana 3/2 Dinosaur with Enrage, and whenever Frilled Deathspitter is dealt damage, it deals 2 damage to target opponent. So it does have 2 points of toughness here, so it's probably only going to do this 1 time for our opponent. It is a 3/2 for 3, which actually is not bad, and being able to do an additional 2 points of damage to our opponent is pretty good once it dies to combat. I think it's actually going to be quite good in a draft environment. I don't think it's going to be good in a more standard environment, but I do think in sealed and draft, it's actually quite a good dinosaur in red. It could do a possible 5 points of damage if it gets in 1 time and then dies a 2nd time. I think that's quite good. And of course, being a 3/2 for 3 is nothing to sneeze at either. Next up, we have Swaggering Corsair. These names. This art also looks fantastic. A 3-mana 2/2 human pirate with Raid, enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it if you attacked with a creature this turn. So it's a 3-mana that can turn into a 3/3 with a +1/+1 counter on it. This card's kind of bad to me. It's nothing like the pirates from Rivals of Ixalan, so I feel like this card right now is just a kind of a terrible last pick pirate for me. Having the raid trigger is okay, but again, it's only becoming a 3/3 for 3, which is not great. That's not to say you wouldn't put it into a pirate list in draft. I just think it's one of those cards that it really doesn't have a lot of onboard presence if it's just a 2/2, and it also doesn't have a lot of onboard presence even as a 3/3. So it's just one of those cards that you might just pass through. So next up, we have Gleaming Barrier, a 2-mana 0/4 wall with Defender, and when Gleaming Barrier dies, create a colorless treasure artifact token with, of course, tab Sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Gleaming Barrier is a 0/4 for 2 which is fantastic, and it gives you mana. I think this is going to be a fantastic card for us for any kind of deck in Draft. This is basically Direfleet Hoarder, but a 0/4, which is actually quite good. The problem that I kind of have with it is that Direfleet Hoarder is a card that we want to die, and Gleaming Barrier is a card that you want to die as well, but at the same time it has the 4 toughness to be able to like withstand several attacks before our opponent does have the ability to kill it. So I think it might change the kind of like gameplay of how Gleaming Barrier works, but I do think that a 0/4 for 2 is quite good. It's almost like a Wall of Omens in that it does give you some kind of advantage in that it does give you mana instead of card draw. I do think Gleaming Barrier is going to be a fun card in the set though. Next up, this is another card that I don't think got spoiled via like officially. I think it just got spoiled like someone opened a pack last weekend. River Darter here. It's a 3-mana 2/3 Merfolk Warrior. River Darter can't be blocked by dinosaurs. I think this is kind of a fun tech card for Merfolk in the Draft environment. I don't think this is a good card for Standard at all. A 3-mana 2/3 is not good in Standard, but a 3-mana 2/3 that almost can be blocked by dinosaurs if dinosaurs is a huge threat in the Draft environment in like game 2 for you. I think River Darter might actually be important. Other than that though, I really don't see this seeing any kind of play. I think this is just going to be a fun card for us, and the art of course is fantastic. Next up we have Thrashing Brontodon, a 3-mana 3/4 dinosaur. 3/4 for 3, which is fantastic already. You can pay 1, sacrifice it, destroy target artifact or enchantment. I feel like this is going to be a standard playable card forever. This card is fantastic. This card is so good, guys. Like, I don't know if like green is really going to come back in a big way with Rivals of Ixalan, but if Thrashing Brontodon is any indication, I feel like dinosaurs are really going to have a lot of really good viable cards in the dinosaur list. That is kind of cheap like the Brontodon here, but it's a 3/4, so it's very strong, but it can also deal with enchantments and artifacts. I feel like this card is going to be in every single Draft deck if you pull into it, if you're pulling into dinosaurs, and I feel like this is going to be a great card in Standard if you're pulling into dinosaurs as well. I would say also in Standard that if they are a green deck and they might want to bring into a Descendant's Deliverance or something like that, Thrashing Brontodon might be the card they pull into instead, because it's just a 3/4 body that can just be sacked for 1. I think that's fantastic. Next up for us, we have Zacama-adjacent Seer. It's a 3-mana 2/3 human druid. You can tap it, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, which is very good, and sacrifice it. Return target dinosaur card from your graveyard to your hand. While I do appreciate it being a mana dork for us, and a 2/3, and having the ability to bring a dinosaur card from the graveyard to our hand, I feel like this won't see any play outside of Draft and Sealed. I feel like it's probably just not that good for Standard. It might be pulled into Standard if we get into a lot of removal and moving on into Rivals as the cards kind of come out, but I feel like the Seer here is just going to be a great Draft card for us to help us ramp into our bigger dinosaurs, as well as bring a dinosaur back from our graveyard with our opponent's one of, removal spell. I feel like it's going to be good for that particular situation. Next up here we have Enter the Unknown, a 1 green mana sorcery. Target creature you control explores. It also says you may play an additional land this turn. Enter the Unknown for us is a fantastic dinosaur card for Draft, Sealed, and I believe Standard. I feel like Enter the Unknown is one of those cards where it's like almost like Rampant Growth or Explore. While it doesn't give you necessarily card draw, it does give you card advantage in that it can give a creature a +1/+1 counter, or give us some mana to play into, as well as playing additional mana this turn. I feel like Enter the Unknown is a fantastic ramp card for us for the dinosaur tribe, and just in green in general. I do feel like this might be kind of paired with cards like Ornithopter, where it's you have a 0 mana 0/2, and you play Enter the Unknown, and then you immediately have a 1/3 on turn 1 with Enter the Unknown and an Ornithopter swinging in. I think that's really fun. But again, it's like one of those cards where I feel like it's really good, but we really need to see it in practice to see how it actually does in the formats. Next up here we have Tendershoot Dryad, a 5-mana 2/2. It's a rare here with Ascend. Of course, this is the if you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token, and the saplings you control get +2/+2 as long as you have the City's Blessing. So a 5-mana 2/2 that makes 1/1s every single upkeep is quite good in the Draft and Sealed environments if they don't have a removal spell for the Dryad here. But I feel like they will because it only has 2 toughness. But if we have the the Blessing here, they are 3/3s, which can actually kind of end a match. If we can kind of protect the Dryad here in Draft and Sealed, I feel like it'll be a very powerful card if you hit into the Ascend mechanic. And I feel like in Standard this card could be a build around card for a cool Ascend green deck. I do think though that it's kind of like out of nowhere as far as making sapling creature tokens, but I think that it's fun regardless. Moving on, we have a card that I need to have a translator for. This is Awakening Amalgamation, a 4-mana artifact creature golem, and Awakening Amalgamation's power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control with different names. This is going to be a decent card for us for probably Commander, probably not the draft or sealed format, most likely not standard. We do have a lot of lands in standard that are different names, obviously, that we use quite often, but I feel like the Amalgamation here would be probably just no more than a 2/2 or a 3/3. I feel like probably in Commander it would be a lot more powerful creature, so we really want to see it in that particular situation. I do feel like this is probably a card you would feel really bad for getting into in draft and sealed. This is a card you definitely want to pass and kind of get into an uncommon instead. Again, it's just going to be a 4-mana 2/2, a 4-mana 3/3, and that's about it. That's kind of sad. Next up here, we have Journey to Eternity, a 3-mana legendary enchantment aura. Enchant creature you control. When enchanted creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control, then return Journey to Eternity to the battlefield transformed under your control. So just on the side here, I think this is a very good card for us. It really does help us kind of like mitigate any kind of removal that our opponent's going to use against us in the draft and sealed environment. Keep in mind that in a draft and sealed environment, our opponent's probably going to have like, you know, 2 to 5 removal spells tops, unless they're playing like maybe red or something like that. Journey to the Eternity really does help us kind of have our creatures last the match, so they can kind of get in for those game-ending points of damage. And then of course when this flips, it turns into Adzel Cave of Eternity, and this is a legendary land. We can tap it to add 1 mana to our mana pool, which is great, and pay 3 colorless, 1 black, and 1 green, tap it, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. I do feel like Adzel Cave of Eternity, once it's flipped, is going to be quite a good card for us in a Golgari strategy. I'm not really sure about reanimation for us in the standard environment. I do think in modern and probably in Commander, this card will see a lot of play. Probably not modern, just based on it being 4 or 5 mana, but I do think it just putting it out on the battlefield like without like sacrificing at the end step or something like that, I think that's amazing. And I do think that the 3-mana enchantment aura is not bad either. I think it's quite good. The only thing I do not like about it is that it just doesn't do anything and kind of like wants our creature to die. So if we are playing standard, this might be a point where our opponent wants to cast out or Ixalan's binding our creature instead of just straight up kill it. I think that's kind of a downside to Journey to Eternity, so that is one of the downsides there. But I do think that once it's flipped, it turns into a real threat for our opponent really quickly. Moving on from something ridiculous to something else ridiculous is Form of the Dinosaur. It's a 6-mana enchantment. When Form of the Dinosaur enters the battlefield, your life total becomes 15. At the beginning of your upkeep, Form of the Dinosaur deals 15 damage to target creature an opponent controls, and that creature deals damage equal to its power to you. Form of the Dinosaur to me is kind of insane. I feel like this is going to be a really fun Commander card. I feel like this will probably be a hilarious card for maybe draft or sealed. Maybe standard if we want to have like a kitchen table brew. I don't really see this doing a lot of damage in any of those formats, maybe besides Commander, if you have something kind of crazy for gaining life. But it is kind of fun in that it is a 6-mana just kill something on your side, your opponent's side of the field every single upkeep. And it does do damage to us as well, but again, keep in mind in draft and sealed, you're probably going to have like maybe 2 points of damage, 3 points of damage, maybe 5 points of damage during each upkeep. It is one of those cards where you have to have it do damage to a creature an opponent controls. Now, if they don't have a creature an opponent controls, it doesn't do damage, of course, but it's not a May ability, so it's one of those cards where you play it, you better hope you have some life gain, or you might be dead. I think this card is hilarious, but I probably would not pick it in draft and sealed myself. Moving up, we have Kumena, Tyrant of Orazca. This is a 3-mana 2/4 legendary creature, Merfolk Shaman. Tap another untapped Merfolk you control. Kumena can't be blocked this turn, which is quite good. Tap 3 Merfolk you control. Draw a card, which is even better. And tap 5 Merfolk you control. Put a +1/+1 counter on each Merfolk you control. Kumena here is really, really powerful in some situations. I feel like in the Deep-Root Waters decks, I feel like Kumena is going to be fantastic for us. I feel like this card is going to be one of those cards that you're going to have 4 of in every single Merfolk deck, and this might be the card that makes Merfolk actually viable in Standard. Of course, we need some more pieces to Merfolk to make it a little bit more viable, but I do think Kumena here is fantastic. It's kind of like Cryptbreaker from Eldritch Moon in that the tap abilities do give it some like fantastic viability into the mid and late game, but being a 2/4 does mean that it can kind of die quickly to a Harness Lightning or something like that. But I do think that Kumena overall is a fantastic legendary creature for us. It is kind of annoying that it's legendary. I feel like having these stacked would be amazing, but I kind of get it. However, I still think that we still need some cheaper 1 mana or 2 mana merfolk in the strategy to have a more viable merfolk strategy. But let's move on here. Last card of the day is Angrath the Flame Charred. This is a 5 mana, 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker Angrath. +1, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. -3, gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap it. It gains haste until end of turn, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step if its converted mana costs 3 or less. And -8, each opponent loses life equal to the number of cards in his or her graveyard. This is the main like set planeswalker for Angrath, and I feel like it's kind of bad. The reason I say that is because none of the abilities actually protect Angrath. It's a 5 mana 4 loyalty planeswalker, so it's a planeswalker that can kind of almost immediately die if we do a -3 on it, and our opponent has a lightning strike available. The -3 is actually not that great either. It does take control of a creature on their side of the field, so it could be a great way to end a match, but I do think having it kind of like take cheaper creatures from our opponent's side of the field and we just kind of sack them at the beginning of their next end step, I feel like that's good, but I do think that having the ability to not be able to do that with any of their like larger creatures like a Bristling Hydra or something like that is going to be kind of bad. But I do think having a -3, grabbing a Long Tusk Cub, swinging in for like 8, and then sacking the Long Tusk Cub is quite good. However, I do think the +1, each opponent discards a card, loses 2 life, is not terrible, it's just not great. It has no like onboard impact, and that's kind of the reason that I dislike the card the most, is that the onboard impact is so minimal as soon as you play this card that you really just want a -3 and it's probably just going to immediately die, and that's really sad. Also, Angrath's like ultimate ability, the -8 here, each opponent loses life equal to the number of cards in his or her graveyard. We have Scavenger Grounds in standard right now, and Angrath, like, that's not going to work like at all. Like, I feel like if you have Angrath, they're going to have Scavenger Grounds and then sack everybody's graveyards, and then it just -8 and does nothing. So I feel like the card overall is just kind of clunky, kind of slow. If the loyalty was maybe 5 or 6, thanks to being able to do the -3 maybe twice or something like that, or maybe just once and then +1 then -3 again, I feel like that might be a little bit better. But I do think Angrath overall is probably my least favorite as far as planeswalkers we've seen in a long time. This is probably Dovin Bond level as far as planeswalkers that I just dislike. I think it's going to probably see play because people want to see it see play, and I do want to have it kind of work in a Minotaur deck myself, but I do think overall Angrath is going to be a card that you might see in draft and you might just pass because it's not that fantastic. But that is it for all the previews for today, guys. I appreciate you guys coming by. We'll definitely have more previews for you tomorrow. Let me know what your favorite card is of the day. Do you disagree with any of my opinions in the video? Please leave that in the comments below. Like the video, of course, if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel for more stuff like this going on every single day this week, hopefully. Yeah, and I'll see you guys in the next video.